Hi, and welcome to Deep Dive with Jamie Stein, where we take a deep dive look at all things reality TV, pop culture, and the world at large. I'm an intuitive and an empath, which means I pick up on the thoughts, feelings, and energy percolating in other people and the world around me. I believe there is meaning waiting to be found at every turn if you're willing to see it. So join me as we dismantle everything from trash TV to high spiritual concepts and learn more about ourselves, each other, and how we're all connected. All right. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Deep Dive with Jamie Stein. In the recent spirit of things, I am just continuing to fly by the seat of my pants. I have been in a very deep creative process with my work and business, so I'm just kind of letting the podcast come to me as it does. And once again, I got a DM or a text message from an old reliable friend of the pod, Molly Durand. She sent me an urgent text about Ashley's love journey, Love Hotel, specifically with Wale. And it was interesting because when I first got the text, usually with Molly and truthfully most of my guests, when I receive messages, we tend to be on the same page. And when I got this message, initially it was a different perspective than the way I had been seeing it, which is always interesting and exciting to me. So I wanted to bring her on so that we could dive into it. Now, having said that, I have since been revisiting certain scenes of the show in preparation. And actually, my perspective is expanding. So, and it sounds like perhaps Molly's perspective is expanding too. So we'll get into all of it. And then maybe depending on timing, we can dip a little bit into the valley because I am just so intrigued by this whole situation brewing with Janet poking at Danny and his drinking and Nia's relationship to that, but then also the impact his drinking is actually having on other people on the show, like Jasmine. So there's a lot there that's very intriguing to me. So hopefully we'll have time for that. Okay, so having said all that, let's just dive right into it. Let me officially welcome our guest, trusted friend of the pod, like I said, Molly Durand. Hi, Molly.
Hello. Yeah, and it's so funny you were saying that because as I rewatched some of it too, I'm like, oh, I could see both sides. So it'll be a fun convo.
All right, well then, yeah, why don't we just jump into it? You were the one, like I said, who sent me this urgent text. I'm of course being playful. She wasn't. I don't want to make it seem like you were sending me some dramatic. No, but it's like I get messages from people all the time. It's a passionate conversation we all like to have about this stuff. But no, I heard from you about Ashley and Wale, so maybe let's start there with what you were originally picking up on. And I know you also said you have kind of larger thoughts just about Love Hotel as a whole show. So yeah, maybe there'll be room for all of it. But yeah, where were you coming into this conversation?
So first off, you and I both love the show because it's so fun and it's allowing me an opportunity to actually get these particular women who I've sort of had, I've sort of seen them under the guise of being with all the other women in different shows. And I actually have grown to love all of them way more with Love Hotel. It's really brought out, I don't know. I really find this show to be really quaint and cute. I love the way it's produced and edited, everything about it. I really am enjoying, and I'm so surprised by that. But okay, so Ashley, it's more about the way that she moves and the way that she navigates. And I feel like she's on this psychic elevator going up and down and cannot land on a decision, which I totally relate to and understand. But she also is just coming out of this divorce, and I feel like being in a very particular dynamic for a really long time. And I feel like she has her guard up because that, and that's why she's indecisive. But when she was first engaging with Wale, he really continually, since the beginning of their relationship, would sort of poke at her to get her to be a little bit more authentic and to just keep it real with him. And I think a part of her craves that and loves that. I think the opportunity between her and Wale would actually be real, raw intimacy, where they both have power games and they both like they both have manipulation within them. But I think that would be an opportunity where she even says, like, I could fall in love with you. And I feel like that's something that Ashley's been running from her whole life, like true intimacy, because I feel like she wants to be in control. Hence why I agree with him that she is, the Gemini game player and like a very smart one. And she's so charming and she knows what to say to the cameras and she knows how to flip a storyline. And Ashley Darby is like always up to something, and it's very hard to be in relationship with somebody who's that strategic that often. And she's also extraordinarily, like, I remember when I first saw Potomac, I was like, she's so cool. Like, she is so lovable. Like, she knows how to be so lovable. But then the more you get to know her, you start to like break the threads of this personality apart. And you're like, I get why you can't make a decision. You have no idea what you want. And Wale's, there was a couple times where she brings up really good points because she's a good communicator. So she'll be like, well, if you want kids then. But she asked him that question, like, when do you want kids? And he was like, I don't know, 3 years. And then she's like, whoa, 3 years? And then he was like, okay, shorter. And then she tells her friend something else. And this other guy that she was talking to, she says, well, you need to speed it up. She sort of tells people what they need to do, but it sort of seems like nobody can really give her what she wants. And then the minute that they do, she says, oh, I'm not into it. Oh, now I'm into it. It's the psychic elevator, the back and forth, which I think comes from her needing to be guarded because she doesn't want to get hurt. And also, I don't think her relinquishing control again, because I think Michael was obviously running the show. So I think she's just scared, but she baffles me.
Well, this is what's so interesting. I mean, yeah, I think I just keep hearing the word power and power dynamics when it comes to Ashley as I hear you talk. And I think even just going back to her relationship with Michael, it's interesting, right? Because there's a way in which, of course, he was running the show of that marriage in terms of power and wealth and calling the shots. I mean, there's so much to say here. However, so I understand there's a certain level on which Michael is in control, certainly on the surface of things. But I was thinking about Ashley in preparation for this and kind of feeling into her orientations towards a relationship with someone like Wale. Because I will say, I mean, in case this isn't apparent yet, when I first watched the show, I was more keyed into kind of what it felt like the pressure I felt Wale was putting on Ashley. And so I have more to say about that in a moment, but let's stick with Ashley for a moment. But yeah, to your point, it's interesting because if we go back to Michael, there's a way in which he looks like he's the one who's in control. But when I was kind of feeling into all this from Ashley's perspective and prep for this episode, it got me thinking about something that my other old friend of the podcast, Piper Sample, once said to me way back when the whole Erica Tom Girardi stuff was really popping off. Piper made this comment to me that I loved, where she basically referred to Erica as a power bottom in the relationship. Meaning, yeah, I mean, there's a way in which she presents as the bottom. And it's an interesting comparison, right? Because Ashley and Erica, I think you could argue both occupy kind of a similar role in those respective marriages in terms of being the younger, quote unquote, trophy wife who's marrying an older man with money, right? And both, Erica and Ashley are survivors, and I think for me, both of them are in very different ways, of course, but both of them are two women who feel to me like they felt like they had to survive and make something work from a young age. Ashley in particular, because as we know, she grew up in poverty and abandoned by her father. And from what we've seen on Potomac, really had a mother who it seemed like Ashley had to be the mother in a lot of ways. And I don't know if I'm making this up or confusing stories, because I know that Nia, is it Nia or Naya? I'm terrible with names. It's Nia.
I actually don't know. Yeah, Nia.
Okay, guys, if we're wrong, forgive us. But, I don't know if I'm confusing, because I know Nia just recently spoke about living in cars, but I feel like Ashley once spoke about that too, about like being homeless, living in cars. So I do get this sense from Ashley, like to your point, that this is someone who has had to scramble to survive. And, part of that for me too is even the way that when she hitched up with Michael, we now know like Michael was financially supporting her mother. So it wasn't just And if you remember when the show first started, Potomac, a big part of their marriage was they were going to open this restaurant together. Ashley was going to learn the ropes of the restaurant. So I always got this feeling from Ashley that the marriage to Michael truly was like a survival strategy in part, in that she was there both to lift herself up out of poverty, to learn aspects of business, you know what I mean, to be perhaps a successful restaurateur, but also to take care of her mother. You know, I don't know if she was taking care of other family members, but there is a scrappy survivor in her, you know? And so all of this is just to say, coming back to the power bottom of it all, it's interesting because Tom Girardi and Michael Darby have control on the surface of things, but there's a way in which, because there's an aspect of control also for Erica and Ashley, because they never have to surrender to their hearts all the way. It's kind of like what you said. There's this aspect with Wale where it could be raw. It could be mutual. It could be mutually surrendered. There's something, even as I say this, there's something so alive and exciting about the idea of Ashley, who's this gorgeous, sexual, attractive, dynamic woman, with a guy like Wale, who's a gorgeous, sexual, embodied man, right? But there's a surrender in that. There's no guardrails. There's no power dynamic keeping things in place. She's not a power bottom in that relationship. She's an equal. It kind of reminds me, you know, they talk about how in S&M, it's like, again, the dominant seems like the one who's in power and control on the surface of things, but really in a way, the submissive is the one who's calling the shots, you know, because they're sort of determining the, you know, the structures and the guidelines. There's a power that they have within the dynamic, but it's almost like a more covert power. And I think from Ashley's perspective, yes, there's a way that she's been in control in her relationship with Michael in terms of like the survival strategy and the way that her heart is protected, and even just within the power games they play with each other. It's not a fully surrendered relationship. So I just kind of want to bring this all in up top in response to what you're saying.
So funny. I just watched Baby Girl last night, which is what you're talking about with, and definitely Nicole Kidman, also Gemini, she did have the power. They both, I mean, but that was an interesting sort of parallel that you drew there, because with Wale okay, the things that struck me is the communication style when she was like, that's okay, we'll leave it in the past. There were a couple times where he said, I feel like you're nitpicking my words. And she very much was. She was like, this is the narrative. This is how it goes. And he was bringing, in my opinion, heart into her more cerebral, intellectual way of saying things. Like, she's very good at being like, well, this is reasonable and this is not, and this is, and she's right. She was right about the kid thing. Like, that is so valid. Everything she said is valid. But then he was bringing in heart and it was tripping her up. And so she started to spin it to where it was a negative. And he goes, I don't want it to be negative with you. And I thought the way that he communicated to cut through and poke through her Queen of Swords energy, I felt like was, because Queen of Swords is a card that I often, you know, I talked about the tarot, but the Queen of Swords is somebody who's seen some life and she has learned her boundaries and she is clear as a bell intellectually. And I see that for Ashley. She speaks very well. She is clear. She knows what she wants, but there's one thing missing with that when it comes to intimacy, and it's the heart. And I think when Wale is trying to communicate to her, I think he's trying to get to the heart and soul of it. And Ashley's eyes are just like darting back and forth because she's like, how can I intellectually navigate this? And you can't. That's not the goal of a true intimate, like, I love the word surrendered, like, to fully, and I love when you said, like, he's hot, she's hot, like, let's put them together. Because you always were like, why is this gorgeous? With both Erica, it's a great parallel, Erica and Ashley, you're like, why are these women could have whatever they want in our minds. Yet they find very specific people. And I think it's so true to what you're saying, where they don't fully have to be embodied themselves emotionally and vulnerably.
And sexually.
Yeah. Which is where their power lies, which is so funny. And that's just goes back to like every episode we ever have, where it's like, we're all afraid of our own power.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, you know, what I've always been drawn to with Erica, and I've talked about this before, but it's like Erica Jane, right, theoretically all about sexuality, that persona, and yet it's such a performative version of sexuality. And there's something that's almost sterile about it because it's so stereotypical. It's like the way that she and Mikey kind of produce this like performance of sexuality that almost just feels like a parody of sexuality. And, you know, to your point, you know, like, yeah, Erica does actually feel like she has a deep sexuality inside of her. But, you know, if she were with someone else who weren't a Tom, then it's almost like she funneled her powerful sexuality into this compartmentalized performance that she could control rather than living it and embodying it in an integrated personal life with a man who could really match her heat. And, you know, I feel and sense a similar thing with Ashley, especially as you're talking. It's just because it's like, you're right, you know, and I'm right. I mean, the gift of where Ashley is at this point, she's actually at a really exciting point in her life, right? Because she's out of the marriage with Michael.
I agree. Yeah.
You know, and I know there's kind of rumblings about that she maybe didn't get the greatest sort of settlement or divorce, but regardless, you know, she's in a different place financially than where she was when she married him. She's got 2 kids that she loves. She's got a home, at least in half her name. She's got the show, so she's got her own money. You know, opportunities are still coming in, and she's still relatively young. I mean, she's only in her mid-30s, right? So Ashley, to me, it's like her whole life is right fucking there, you know? And, you know, as you're speaking and as I see her navigating like Wale and Ralph, I me't so interesting from a waking dream perspective. It's like this literally couldn't be more symbolic in a way. You know, you've got kind of like, you know, you've got the hot, strapping, heart-centered, embodied man who kind of feels more like her energetic equal, you know, and then you've got the older white dude who's like representing daddy issues all the way, right? Because she literally has like a white male father, right? And she's like navigating between the two. I have to imagine this is sort of where she is in her journey. It's like, what am I choosing for myself now? But as you were speaking, I could just feel, that's what I'm saying. It's like, everything right now is lined up in her life. I don't think, is in the same do or die fight for survival that she was when I imagined she met Michael. Like, she's got grounding, she's got stability, she's got the kids, she's got money, she's got opportunities, and yet the fear is still there. And that's what I was feeling for her. Like, when I really imagined or felt into the possibility of her taking a leap with a guy like Wale, it did, as Ashley, it just felt really scary. It felt like, this is where I'm not in any type of control of my life. I feel sort of like I'm in danger. Like, it just feels like I said, the guardrails are off. What's the metaphor? Like on a roller coaster, what do you sit in a roller coaster? Like, the roller coaster could fly off the track at any moment. It's almost like a feeling for me as Ashley, like I could get sideswiped from behind. Like, there's an attack coming. It's not, what I'm hearing is it's not safe for me to let my guard down. It is just not safe. And I think when she's with men who are more like a Michael Darby or a Ralph, you know, who are the daddy issues, who are going to allow her to be the little girl, the power bottom, to have her guard up, it's like, it feels safer to her. It feels like she's still that scavenger who's, you know, fighting for survival and making it work. And that feels safe to her somehow.
Yes. I feel like false safety is something that is such a theme for a lot of women. Like, we come into these roles, like she knows that role, right? The one that you're just talking about. She knows that role and it's safe and she can play it. She knows how to be, who to be, and how to navigate and actually get what she wants. And I think, but that's also like tugging on her desire. And, you know, it's so funny. She literally is whispering to Wale at the bar right after she just picked Ralph to be like, for the date or whatever. And she's whispering to him, like, I could fall in love with you. And that scares me, because what if we don't want the same things? And so she's whispering what you just said, admitting. And the thing what's confusing for Wale is that she'll say stuff like that, but then pick Ralph, and that her words don't line up with her actions. Her desire doesn't line up with her actions. And then she has to navigate with the way that she speaks, and she will like intellectually find ways to navigate around making it like justifiable and all this stuff. And it's so funny that you brought up Erica Jane doing the performative sexuality. Like, she's just like embodies sexuality, right? And then we see last season when Ashley sort of ended the season doing a drag show where she was in full like drag, doing this very sexual drag as a man, you know, like as a man. And even when she's talking to Ralph, she's like, well, I'm bi. And, you know, there's a duality within her where there was one guy named Jason. She said he had a threesome in the past. And so she sort of discarded him immediately because it could happen again. And he was like, no, I don't want that again. And she's like, too late, right? Like too late. And it's sort of this double standard too, where she has all these rules and these ideas and like these blockades that she's putting up with people and then bouncing back from one to the other. At one point she says she loves kissing Ralphie so hot, then it's a lizard, then it's back to being hot. I mean, it is all over the place because I think this whack-a-mole is like how she can navigate, similar to like being used to like what you were saying in Survival, being used to, I think she's strategic and ultimately will go with the person that she think can benefit her logic. And she's trying to be smart about it. She says that a lot. I'm trying to be smart about it. And you can see when she has her walls up with a guy, because she, you know, we know Ashley as somebody who's like always bubbly, smiley, and saying a good joke and all of that. But she has a very discerning eye and she'll give people a look and be very annoyed. I think like, I would love a little bit more to see her be a little bit more honest with herself without all of the games and strategy and the power plays and like making sure she looks good or making sure that she's presenting in a certain way. And I think that's something she could have with Wale because he asks the right questions. Like he asks the right questions and he gets soft when she's getting analytical. He gets soft. And he even like fell over to her at one moment. And I think for him to be soft to her, but also to hold his boundaries. I mean, he admitted, like, maybe I can't do this at one point. And then she's like, oh, so you're out? And he's like, you're not listening to me. Like, and she's like, you're out. Because she has a big ego. And so it seems too like it's like when we let our ego get in the way and then we get our defenses up. And she's like, I don't want to look like a fool. I want to be in control. I don't want to look like a fool.
Yeah, I mean, I do want to visit Wale's side of the street in a moment, but yeah, it's interesting because, you know, what I hear when you speak, there's almost like such a resonant metaphor here just for kind of the arc of someone's lifetime, perhaps their soul journey, their emotional journey. But what, like kind of the headline that I'm hearing here in terms of what we're exploring with Ashley is that moment where you no longer need your survival strategies anymore, you know, and you're so used to them. And because it's all we've ever known, we all adapt survival strategies to survive, you know, whatever the particular challenges of our childhood might be. And from a soul perspective, I believe I spoke a little bit about this last time. That's part of what we're meant to do here. We're meant to develop these skills so that at some point we can then go back and integrate them with what I might call the deeper truth of who we are. So with Ashley, it does feel like she's been in survival mode and on the prowl for so long. And then, like I said, she's kind of at this moment where she no longer needs them. But when you've identified with those survival skills for so long and they've carried you to a certain point, it is scary to put them down. And it does feel like a kind of nudity. It's like a knight taking off his armor. And it's like, holy shit, but wait, you know, because no one's attacking the castle anymore. So it's like, okay, I know intellectually I should be able to take my armor off. No one's coming, but you're so conditioned to anticipating whatever that force of antagonism might be or that danger from the universe that it feels so frightening to put it down. And it does feel like all these games that Ashley plays, this has been part of her survival strategy. But it's interesting because when I do drop deeper into the fear, like the vulnerability that I feel underneath the possibility of taking off her armor and letting herself kind of fly into the sunset, like with someone like Wale, who again, and we'll sort of get into this in a moment, but you know, Wale does, like he feels hot. Like it feels like a life with him. It would be about intensity and chemistry. Like he's ready to go, you know? And as Ashley, it's interesting because she does lead with her craftiness, whether that's like playing producer on Potomac or, you know, whatever. She's always, like you said, she's always playing a game. But it's interesting because when I feel the fear underneath that, I actually do feel a very tender heart in her. Like I feel a very, 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 and it's probably part of what makes her so charming is that there's a real heart in her, but I feel a very tender little girl and very sensitive. And so I imagine too, that's also just information of this is a woman who has been protecting something very tender inside of her. It feels like there's been something very tender and vulnerable in her. And she's had to kind of protect that because she's been navigating circumstances that were nothing but tender. You know what I mean? Like, again, poverty, mother's addiction, and then even within the relationship with Michael, right? Like we are getting clues now about, it really feels like he was, I mean, if we sort of go with what she's saying, which I think at this point I have no reason not to believe her, but it sounds like she was really sort of making herself go along with what he wanted sexually in terms of threesomes and kinkiness in a way that maybe wasn't really true for her, which, I mean, even just saying it, my heart starts to flinch because it's like, that's like a really kind of dark level of self-betrayal. It's like, I'm kind of offering myself up for sexual situations with this Jamie, want to be mindful of my language. Michael Darby is a hard guy. Like he's not, let's just say he's not what I would call immediately sympathetic, so to go into these bedroom scenarios with this kind of controlling guy who often comes off as like lecherous and insensitive and putting myself through that for the sake of survival and strategy, it all just speaks to a woman who really, I guess, has been protecting something really tender inside of herself. And maybe that's part of it, is that part of Ashley, part of taking the armor off might on some level be processing the prices that she's paid up until now to get to where she is. And maybe there's also still a part of her that's like keeping that at arm's length, because let's just say she goes towards a Wale. There might be a real aspect of grieving there of like,
yes,
okay, now I have to really come face to face with the choices I made to survive and the knowledge that it possibly could have been different. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot there for Ashley to possibly process.
So yeah. So you just really brought it home for me, because the moment where you were talking about this little girl with this soft heart, who I think just wants to be taken care of, because I was like, her and her mom are like equals, kind of like, they're like homies. They're not really like, it wasn't really like a mother figure. They're like more friends, right? And her mom seems really...
Or Ashley's more the mother.
Sure, yeah. But they're both very sweet. And I do see that sweet side of her. I do see it's like in her face. It lives in her face. She has this very childlike innocence about her. And that's why when she falls into the arms of Ralph, who has this big bear voice and encapsulates her, that's why she's drawn to that, because she can sink into them. And finally, that little girl can just be like safe in the arms of a big older man who represents her father. And she's so smart. She acknowledged it. She's like, maybe I could work out my daddy issues with Ralph. Like she is so smart and so aware of everything that's going on. And that's what fascinates me about Geminis, actually. I know I always bring it back to that, but like they are so aware of the macro and everything that's going on, because they can be guides and all of that. But then when it comes to their actions in their interpersonal life, they often say the thing and then do the opposite. But if you say, oh, you just did the opposite, they'll be like, no, I didn't. It's like they have a blind spot, And it's like she can be hyper aware that she is going towards Ralph for her father issues. And I identify with this, like, as far as like, we can be intellectually aware, self-knowledge. We can have self-knowledge. It doesn't really mean much if our actions are still the unconscious actions, right? So when she's in the arms of Ralph and she goes to the camera, she's like, oh my God. I think that speaks to what you're talking about. That's the little girl finally getting the like, I'm going to be okay. And I don't have to grow up and work so hard and be a mom, be everybody's mom. Like I can just relax into this. Right. And with Wale, it's like the adolescent, the arrested adolescent would have to be a woman. And not a woman doing drag or a woman who's hot to trot and cracking jokes, and not a woman who's just like with these guys and whatever. I would have to be authentic. I would have to be stripped down, real, myself. And I think that that's what she craves the most. I believe that's where she's headed. I think the trajectory of where the arc of Ashley's story is, I think she's headed towards more authenticity. I don't think she's in a direction where she wants to keep scheming and this, that, and the other. But then you watch Love Island and you see her bounce around with these guys. And it's like, look, it's probably hard for her. She's probably got options. She's adorable. Who wouldn't want to be with her, right? But it's like you have all of these options. And if you're looking at things, I think it's also about like the physical, like the material versus the spiritual and the heart, right? So I think she sort of struggles with that a little bit, like not being vain, but I mean, maybe just like keeping the status quo going with how she's material. I don't know. Like there just feels like a little bit like she needs not to be the puppet master of her own life, but to be entertaining herself, not really asking the deeper questions. And the cerebral energy that she has is just so wild and it's so active that I could imagine it's very hard for her to sort of just like sink into her heart. And I think with somebody like Wale, she could really balance the head and the heart. And I think Ashley with the balanced head and heart would be such a beautiful, powerful, embodied woman who allows herself to be soft and vulnerable and still funny, bubbly, and all of the other wonderful things. But I think that would take a lot of her being honest with herself. And I think to your point about the whole like survival thing is if you're still in survival mode, it's hard to slow down and do that.
Well, and it's also too, I mean, you brought up another really vital piece of this, which is her mother and that possible enmeshment and codependency, because she has been taking care of her mother. And we saw, I mean, there was one great season where she was drawing more boundaries with her mother, actually in large part because of Michael. Michael was starting to draw some lines about basically saying, I'm not going to continue to financially take care of her if she's still supporting, I guess she had this, problematic boyfriend. And that season was fascinating, but, you saw how difficult it was for Ashley to draw boundaries with her mother. And then when her mother did, it's like, I think her mother's name is Shelley. The mother went from, to your point, sweet, nice as pie, beautiful smile to, there was an undercurrent. Like she was not happy about the boundaries. And again, kind of sensing these two of we're all we have. It's us against the world. It's about our survival. I can imagine there's also something here, not just about Ashley grieving what she's been through and really sort of taking in the emotional price she's paid for her survival strategies. But I have to imagine there also might be something about deeper truths, looking at deeper truths in her relationship with her mother and a rage that's there that I would guess. I mean, I'm sure Ashley has some consciousness of like resenting her mother, but if I were a betting man, if I had to bet my life one way or the other, I'm willing to bet she's maybe not let herself know like the depth of her rage towards this woman for not being a proper mother and for needing Ashley to be the mother. And just, this is it's part of what set into motion her survival strategies, which she has now paid a price for. So, and not just the rage, but the heartbreak of that relationship perhaps being put in its proper place where she has to really recognize the limitations of it and recognize that her mother really is kind of this, this in a lot of ways emotionally limited woman who's never really going to be a true equal, in a real way. So I don't know. It's another dimension of what I think Ashley would have to face if she were to let herself go towards a Wale as a vehicle towards deeper surrender, taking her armor off, like you say, letting her heart energy run, letting her life force energy and her sexuality run through her heart center. Although I will say the last thing I'll say, though, which is interesting to me, is I am getting a hit for Ashley. And I think this kind of fits in with what we're both saying about the way in which, as much as she's continued to have blind spots and as much as she's still getting in her own way, as we're saying, she's also created a lot of change for herself. And like, to our points, she, like you said, like she's aware of stuff, and you're right. There's a certain consciousness around wanting to do things differently. And I will say, just before I make my final point, it's interesting because I hear what you're saying about like the drag king and the hot to trot persona and the ways that, yes, there's absolutely double standards for sure. Like, why does she get to go out there and experiment and express herself, but then Jason can't do the same thing, right? And there's a way where she sort of uses it to play a part for the show. And I also want to say, I also feel the place where it's like, especially when she was talking to Ralph about exploring her bisexuality, even the drag king performance on Potomac, like I was like, something about this actually feels really alive. Like I really see her exploring things for herself and giving herself permission to explore things for herself. Like it does feel like a part of this is a genuine intention to let myself explore like the truth of who I am, like in a really kind of non-binary type of way. And so this is all just to say that I do, mixed in with her clinging to certain survival strategies and still having her guard up, I also feel her intention for new choices and change. And what I was going to say was what I actually feel for Ashley, and I feel this for certain clients sometimes, is even though there is definitely a depth of emotion here to kind of reckon with in terms of everything she's been through, my feeling for her actually is if she actually let herself go through this process and to put her guard down and to surrender and to let her feelings catch up with her and to perhaps individuate from her mother, I actually get the feeling for her things would fall into place pretty quickly. Like I don't feel this as like some protracted dark night of the soul that has to last for you. I mean, look, she's obviously a powerful manifester because she has survived. She has gotten herself to this point. She does have like all these opportunities. You know what I mean? She's generated a lot of success for herself, even as a power bottom in relationship to, lecherous Michael. So, to me, that all just suggests this is a powerful manifester. And like I said, I just think that if she actually really aligned her unconscious to truly kind of put her guard down and do this work. I'm kind of like bringing Wale in, not even as like a literal, like she has to be in a relationship with him, but almost like as a symbolic metaphor for stepping through that door of what he represents. I actually think things could fall into place for her quite quickly. But again, this is what I'll say, Molly, before I turn it back to you. Even saying that, as Ashley, when I said things could change quite quickly, my heart braced in fear. Like there's something in Ashley that's just like, it's scary. Like again, taking the guardrails off feels scary. Like I haven't learned to trust that the universe has my back yet. I haven't learned to trust how to rest in my own vulnerability yet. Like there is a way in which she sort of needs to go slowly here to protect that inner child. But so I guess it's a dance I'm talking about. It's a slowness to get in a relationship with these more vulnerable aspects of her so that she can then make more aligned choices that I think in the long run will then allow her to really step into a life of her dreams that feels like it would come into focus quite organically, simply, and quickly.
Totally, like that non-binary part of because I agree with that whole like when she did that whole dance as whatever, I can't remember the name of the character that she was playing, but it's like if she could take off the suit and the costume and just be that, I think she'd be more authentic. Like she was in it and it was great and it was awesome to watch, but she's also soft in all the other things. So it's almost as if she could give herself permission to take off the costumes and take off the masks and take off the having tos and to be in the full power of the non-binary way of living. Cause she is experimental and she is like avant-garde and she is wild and bizarre and all the things, which is why she wants a man who's strong because a divine masculine or a true alpha is not at all afraid of a wild, free woman. In fact, they hold a container for them, the feminine, they hold the container for the feminine to be able to dance and twirl and live and thrive within it without them being afraid of having to like suppress it or control it. But so back to Wale a little bit, like he is also, I totally agree with you. He was putting on the pressure and at the top of it, he was heavy handed for sure. And I think that there were some moments with him too, where, he was like, I want this girl. And I felt like he kind of was making it too serious too soon. So she had reason to back it up and to put a little put the guardrails up. And then what I like about the two of them together, though, is that when she would sort of say to him, like bring things to him, then he would soften and then he would bring things to, like, I do like their form of communication because I actually think they get somewhere, which is rare in these type of shows.
It's so funny to me that you brought up the masculine as the framework that holds the wild feminine. I will just say, as like a tiny digression, part of what I do in my intensive with clients is for each individual, I start bringing in like the archetypal themes and the collective themes. And there's someone I'm working with right now, particularly around like the patriarchy and the father wound. And so part of what I do is I have these conversations with ChatGPT about these themes. And I've literally been defining like archetypal masculine energy versus archetypal feminine energy, archetypal divine father versus archetypal divine mother. But it's so much exactly what you just said. And I'm just saying this because guys, I don't have the form for this yet. So I don't exactly know what form this is going to take. But I keep having this impulse as I like write up these conversations on these archetypal themes to like somehow make them available to people. So if you're someone who's maybe interested in receiving channeled writings for me about topics like this, I don't know, email me or DM me and let me know, because this is sort of something that's coming down the pipeline.
It's very important right now also. And I feel like everybody's going through it, even in the world stage, obviously. So that's awesome.
Well, because I not to get too far adrift, but I know this speaks close to your heart and it speaks close to mine. I really think this, what I would call this distortion between the masculine and the feminine that lives in all of us, is the heart
and the conflict
of what's happening right now. Like, I don't know. That's just how it feels to me. And I feel like something wants to emerge through all this. It's not the old way of orienting towards this. It's like we're lost in an old conversation. And I just feel it, like something new wants to emerge. And that's why, anyone who follows me on Instagram, it's funny, you brought up Baby Girl. I posted a clip from Baby Girl with kind of like this sort of pointed question on the caption. This clip has been viewed, I haven't checked recently. Last time I checked, it was like over 1 million views. And it's like that movie, which as a movie to me is very imperfect, but it tapped into something, and then Nosferatu. There's so much I want to get into with this in the coming months, but it's in pop culture, it's in the collective. Something's playing out about this kind of, something's gone left with divine masculine, divine feminine. And again, just to reiterate, even saying that, it's not even about, I know you know this, but for clarity, it's not about biological gender. These are archetypal energies that live in all of us. And something has gotten very distorted. And I think we are seeing that play out a lot in reality TV.
Can I add one thing to that super, super quick? I did Mahler's Eighth Symphony when I was young because I was in a choir. It was a professional choir. We did it with Christoph Eschenbach. It was the greatest experience of my life to this day. And I looked up what I was singing at the end for the last movement, Into Heaven. And it says, all that is transitory is but a symbol. The inadequate is here made real. The indescribable is here accomplished. It's talking about heaven. And then it says, the eternal feminine draws us upward. And they're talking about the Empress, right? The earth, Gaia, the seed of life, and the eternal feminine being like giving birth to, which is, again, not talking about just women. You could talk about Mother Mary too, like the virginal, like the actual birthing of creativity. The eternal feminine draws us upward. So it's that connection to the creativity within us. And you talked about Kundalini, like drawing us upward. So I really think that what you're doing and what you're talking about is exactly what you said. It's playing out in TV. It's playing out in everywhere. We cannot leave the house or watch a screen without being confronted with it.
Yeah, and I just feel this invitation to really start dismantling it and to take a deeper look at like what we're watching play out. So, but yeah, coming back to Wale, yeah, I agree with you. I think what I see in Wale, so I think my initial hesitation with him, and again, liking him, like I like him. I mean, he's very attractive, but I like him just, he's, there's a lot that I like about him. But yeah, I did feel this kind of covert pressure. And I would see Ashley say things sometimes that to me made a lot of sense. I mean, you said this, like basically saying like, look, I have 2 kids. I'm pretty sure I'm not going to want more kids. You're young. You want more kids. Like this might be fundamentally irreconcilable. And rather at times than him really sort of taking that in and saying, yeah, I see your point. Let's sit with this. It's like he would immediately twist it to, oh, well, so you're coming up with a reason to write me off. It's like, and then there was kind of another time even just where she was saying, look, I, in the past, have gone all in right away. And in the past, it's blown up in my face. So in a way, I'm trying to choose something different here. And, look, whether you want to say that's a part of her control and her fear, that's a whole other conversation. And we can have that. We have been having that conversation. But regardless, she was still saying something really clearly and directly, regardless of where it was coming from. She was like, I want to move slowly. And what I saw Wale doing at times was rather than just like hearing her and saying, okay, like I get it. And I want to respect your process, or I hear you and I notice it's bumping up against something in me. And so maybe this is something we need to work out. What I would see him do is take it really personally and then kind of immediately be like, oh, you're just like looking for reasons to like, well, I mean, at one point he was like, just give in. And I'm like, well, like someone like this, the little girl is showing up and saying, I'm scared. I need space. I need slowness. You don't meet that little girl with, okay, just jump off the cliff. It's like, you gotta like, if you're going to be in relationship with Ashley or whomever, you gotta hear what she's saying and take her in. And I think, and so like that kind of like, I felt this kind of devouring demand in him where it felt like he would take things personally, but then he would like, rather than taking responsibility for it triggering something in him, he would turn it back around on her and kind of make her the problem and her process the problem and kind of saying like, and in a way that to me just felt like it really wasn't taking her in and it was dismissing her. So that aspect of him was concerning to me. Now, as I was like feeling into the episode with all this and I was kind of taking him in on a deeper level, I think what I did start to feel a possibility of is like that, yeah, that they just might not be in this, like they just might not be in the same place. What I feel in Wale is he's ready to go. And I think what Wale really is looking for is to go on the ride. And I think probably what he wants is a woman to go on the ride with him. You know what I mean? Where it's like, I think Wale is in a position of, I don't want to think too hard. I don't want the guardrails. I want to leap first and think later. And I'm starting to think maybe there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. Initially, I think when I was just taking in his control and the way we turned things on Ashley, there was this part of me that's like, oh, wait, there's this undercurrent of like control and he's putting pressure on her. And I was uncomfortable with it. But I was like, I think maybe what's happening here is that he's someone who's ready to go on the ride. He's excited about Ashley, but Ashley's not ready to go on that ride with him. And it's almost like, but then I think where it goes wrong for him is that he does take it personally. And I think and so I would be curious, look, in the place where we're all manifesting, kind of what we're drawing in, I'd be curious for Wale, maybe what his core relationship is with his own kind of wild freedom and his uncensored heart, because it's interesting that he wants to bring this to Ashley when Ashley isn't meeting him there. And it's interesting that he's taking it so personally and in such a way, like rather than taking a step back and being like, oh, she can't meet me in my place of wild abandon and enthusiasm. And I notice this is bringing, like I'm experiencing this as being shut down in a personal rejection. And there's some sort of anger in me around this. And I think that's where I feel like I get a little, I would want to like invite him to look at that, because again, I feel like rather than sitting with his own trigger, which is, I feel shut down, I feel unmet, this is bringing something up in me, I'm experiencing some sort of pattern of, I'm bringing this woman all my heart and then she's shutting me down. Rather than sitting with that and what that might be reflecting in him in terms of pattern, I see him putting it back onto Ashley and basically saying, you're wrong, you're scared, you're playing games, you've just got to let go, you've got to meet me here. And it's like there's something in himself that it feels like there's like some sort of heartbreak inside of himself that he's avoiding. And that's where I get a little protective of Ashley in all of this.
I don't disagree with it. I think the way he was heavy-handed, like I said, and he needed to lighten up. I feel like he kind of did. I feel like, because, at one point Giselle's like, Ashley was saying Jason's more fun. And then Giselle's like, well, Wale's hilarious with me. And then later he started to show that side with Ashley. But you're right. He was not showing that at the top. He was like, I'm all in. Why aren't you all in? And he was making a demand. And that demand is difficult. But one thing I will say is that, okay, the two of them energetically, like take the words out of it, right? Like take the conversations out of it. We're always feeding off of each other based off of energy. And I think they both energetically knew they were a match, but both of them would have to evolve and change in order to make that match manifest, which I think would ultimately, like what you said earlier, where they would actually find progress very rapidly. They would both have to undergo egoic deaths in order to be together, which is pretty common in like a real match. Like that's very common. That's like
it's all the time. I mean, that's the point of relationships.
Exactly. So like that would be the challenge. And I feel like he tried to I feel like he did try towards the end, but then he got frustrated when her words didn't match up with her actions. But I think it's okay. So my whole point on this whole Ashley thing was just the way that she moves. And I was hoping you could help me navigate it, because it feels like the way that she moves is so discombobulating, and it doesn't have a through line, even though her words all make sense. It's like she speaks so clearly and rationally, but then the way that she moves energetically, it's like a maze that you can't find a through line to. So my question is like, that's what I think he's picking up on. I think we pick up on energy, not like, and it's almost like he sees her higher self and she sees his higher self, and they're both just sort of battling each other because, like you said, they would have to both surrender to be together. And they're both such powerful, sexual, beautiful people that I don't think they've ever been challenged this way. I don't think that either one of them has been challenged this way. She's frustrated, he's frustrated, but they still like each other.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's almost like right when you start talking, I feel like for me, just to put the Wale side of it in the simplest way, like the subtext I kind of hear from him is basically kind of like, you got to get on the ride with me. And if you don't, I'm fucking pissed. And I just feel like he's not saying that out loud. And so then it comes out. So even like towards the end, or whatever, the last episode that we watched, when he said to her basically, look, I think I've made my case. You have all the info you need. It's just time for you to make a decision. It was interesting to me because I was like, the content of that I'm okay with. Like the content, I feel like that's powerful. It's a boundary. It's clear. It's actually kind of sexy. Like when I just think of the content, because it's so clear. It's kind of like the framework we're talking about. It's just that masculine, like, look, this is what it is. Here it is. You do you and you let me know. But I think what's difficult where Wale goes left is he's not taking responsibility underneath. Like, this is what I'm saying. It's kind of almost like what I was seeing, for example, with Paige and Craig. If I'm giving you space, but actually really deep down, I'm just giving you space so that you come back to me. Or same thing with Lindsay and Carl. Like, yeah, I'm giving you space to figure out your career, but really deep down, what I'm saying is I'm giving you space just so you fucking figure out your career. It's a similar thing where it's like, I'm saying, hey, lady, I'm good. But deep down, it's really like, but I want you to choose me, and it's fucking pissing me off that you're not choosing me. And it's fucking like, I feel like, in a way, Wale right. is terrible for a show like this because he does take things personally. And I feel like, because there was that one scene where he was basically like, even like, I know you need to date other guys, but even when you're dating other guys, like, I want you to be thinking of me. And Ashley was like, I have been. I didn't even kiss anyone else. And you could see like what Wale is. And then Wale was like, yeah, no, I know you're right. And I feel like he's saying that with his words, but I feel like the subtext is actually what I want from you, Ashley. Even though we're on this dating show and it's literally your job to date around, I want you on my ride. I want you choosing me right now. I want us running off in the sunset and leaving Love Hotel together. And the fact that you're not doing it is fucking pissing me off, which is fine. But it's like he's not saying that out loud. And so then his energy is coming out sideways where Ashley's approaching him at the pool being like, can we talk? And he's like, no. And then I think it was Giselle or someone who was like, maybe you should go let her know what's going on. And he's like, oh, yeah, you're probably right. There's an undercurrent of disowned anger and demand where his, kind of like what you're saying with Ashley, his words are not exactly matching his underlying energy, which, by the way, how convenient for Ashley, because if she is scared to surrender to him, this is a perfect excuse not to surrender to him. She can pick up on this and be like, well, he's a little too intense for me. You know what I mean? It's like perfect for her.
Well, that's the thing, is that I think they're both sabotaging the connection. Is that like, I think that's his demand, because like, I think they both saw it and they're like, yeah, boom. I mean, she even says like, I could see myself living a life with him. I could see myself falling in love with him. And he's like, this girl's amazing. I think that scared the shit out of both of them. And the way that Wale dealt with it was like, if she doesn't give me an answer immediately, because he said, I'm starting to lose respect for myself. And Giselle actually agreed with him prior too. It was like, because Ashley was like in the pool with Ralph, and it was like, they were like, basically that is a little humiliating in some aspects, even if you're on a show with multiple people, like the way that she can go in and out with both of them so intensely. If you were there, most people would feel like Wale did, like, well, what's real and what's not. And that's my thing that I'm trying to understand about Ashley, is I can't always tell what's real and what's not, because she's such a good speaker to the testimonials and because she knows how to speak so clearly. But then you'll see her like roll her eyes when they're in a group setting. When you catch her, it's like, what does she really think and feel? And so, but maybe the same thing for him, right? Like I found him to be hilarious and charming, and like the one person who could actually like cut through her nonsense and like kind of poke at her to get the truth out, because it's hard to get her to be authentic because she's so good at her games. So like, I think he challenges her. I think she challenges him if he's willing to take the invitation. And I do agree he was less willing than like, I don't think either one of them was willing, but they're both, in my opinion, sabotaging the connection. Ashley's sabotaging it by not even diving in, and he can feel that, and he's sabotaging it by forcing her to dive in on his terms.
Exactly. And what I love about what you brought in earlier, because yeah, absolutely, that's what relationships are here for. Like, if we're here to grow and evolve over lifetimes, relationships are here to help us grow and evolve. So absolutely, the flame and the connection draws us to people, and then we bump up against each other's limitations. And so then there's a choice in relationship. We're either going to mutually grow and evolve for the sake of our evolution, both as a couple and as an individuals, or we're going to back away from the invitation and we're going to double down and we're going to start to resent each other and it's going to explode into Scandival. What I see, like the invitation here with Wale and Ashley potentially, like I love what you brought in. It's sort of like there's an opportunity for Ashley to experiment with getting on the ride and establishing a new relationship, perhaps to, surrender, perhaps in a more modulated way, which brings me to Wally's side with it, where it feels like Wally, there's an invitation for him to maybe slow down a little. You know what I mean? To have the same kind of like heat and intention and desire. But like when someone like Ashley comes his way, is like, well, wait, I need to kind of slow down a little to take that in. Because I have to imagine there's a part of him that needs to slow down. It's almost like I get this image that Wale is the type of guy who, like, if he's on an app, has really fixed ideas about how communications. So like, I'm not here to mess around. And you know what? Like, if I message you, you better message me back in an hour because I'm not playing games. And if you don't message me in an hour, it's like this self-fulfilling prophecy of like, you know what I mean? It's like people do that where it's like, it's so intense right out of the gate. And, I think there's something about, I love what you brought in. It's total yin and yang of relationship. Like Ashley's kind of guarded in a defensive way to slow the ride down so that she can be that sort of scrappy. And maybe this is sort of what you're asking me a little bit in terms of like how she maneuvers. Like I just keep getting this image. I keep hearing the words like little orphan Annie. And I get the archetypal image of like, just sort of like an orphan, like in the streets. Like, it's almost like Dickens. It's like, just like, grabbing her scraps where she can and like polishing a chimney over here and doing this work over here, but then pickpocketing over there. It's like, she's just grabbing whatever she can to make it work. And it is kind of like a whack-a-mole thing. And that's part of how she kind of slows the ride down because there are so many sort of guardrails in place, whereas he feels like he just wants to jump all in. And if we go with like the Tinder metaphor, like he'll go hot and heavy, right? And then it'll probably like blow up in his face. But it's all the other person's fault, right? Because they couldn't like match his intensity or his conviction. So I just feel like there's probably something there for Ashley around dropping the games, getting on the ride. And there's something there for Wale about slowing the ride down a little bit and taking someone in when they say, I'm scared, let's slow down. Because again, I just have this feeling Wale probably actually has a voice in him that's actually saying, I'm scared, I need to slow down. And it's probably very hard for him to tolerate that. So when he's trying to smash it out of Ashley, it's probably because he's trying to smash it out of himself.
Oh, I love that. I feel very complete now.
I know. All right, Dad, this was like richer than I had even imagined.
I know, same. Always.
Well, how are we feeling? I mean, look, I love when we reach these organic points where we could just stop and end. It's been an hour. Are we feeling like we want to touch down on Danny and Nia?
Oof. I mean, we can try and see where it goes. There's a lot to unpack, I think, but I'm curious to what, like, between Danny and Nia, like, what is sparking your interest?
No, I think I'm just drawn to the Danny, Nia, Jasmine, Janet situation because it does so represent the idea of nuance and multiple things being true at once. And I think anytime I see a situation where I see the viewing audience kind of reacting in a way that to me feels reactive and is kind of glossing over a lot of these nuances, there's a part of me that wants to jump into them a little bit. Like there really is so much here. I mean, I think what's so interesting to me about it, it's interesting. I'm still like, my heart is now like frozen and my words are getting caught in my chest. Like, oh, my toes are curling. Like my whole body is freezing. It's so interesting. It's like, I named that it feels like there's a lot of threads here and there's a lot of nuance and it's almost like everything just gets bottlenecked all of a sudden. So I don't know who or what this is reflecting, if it's the people on the show, if it's whatever this conversation represents in the collective. What I was suddenly aware of, what I was going to start to go to was Danny first and his relationship to alcohol. And so maybe this has something to do with that. Because I think what's so interesting about it is, let me just say this up top. I 100% think Janet's doing something that doesn't feel good. I think there's a way that she's weaponizing whatever's going on with Danny, and I don't think she has good intentions, and I don't think she has concern for him. So I just want to say that. But and we'll come back to her probably, but what's interesting to me about it is that, you know, it does feel like there's a real issue here. And it does seem as though Danny has what we might call, well, let's just say this. It looks like there's an invitation for Danny to really look at his relationship to alcohol. And so one of the things I do want to say, because I sometimes see this sort of getting lost in the shuffle, is that, you know, something very real happened for Jasmine. And it's clear she has really strong feelings about it. And I kind of want to say, like, she has a right to have feelings about it. And okay, great. This is helping me find what I want to say. I want to be clear, like, do I think she should be visiting that on Nia? No. And she owned it. She kind of owned it at that one, I think, dinner they had at the Airbnb, where she was like, you know, basically, I'm realizing I have unresolved feelings about what happened with Danny. And essentially, I'm taking it out on Nia. But, you know, coming back to that, I can understand the bind that she's in, because with Danny, you know, there was this experience, and I want to kind of, I am fascinated by Danny's kind of what I would call his duality. Like, Danny has a dark passenger.
Yes.
You know, and I think there is a way that he's a genuinely nice guy who cares and has a big heart, and he's got a fucking dark passenger. And I've kind of, you know, explored a little with his relationship with alcohol. We'll get there. So for Jasmine, here's this guy, you know, who is a trusted friend who on a certain level, I have to imagine she feels safe and comfortable with. He gets drunk. His dark passenger comes out. He's smacking her on the ass. He's telling her, go get daddy a drink. I mean, there's complexity to this, not just in terms of like from a gender standpoint, from a race standpoint, from a sexuality standpoint. You know, I can imagine for her, it was deeply upsetting. And what I can also imagine, I think this is where the bottleneck feeling is coming from, the silence, is that Danny, it's so interesting, right? Because Danny, again, there's this aspect of him who's loving and kind, and I think really does genuinely want to do right. And so that aspect of Danny issues what for him, on a conscious level, is a sincere apology, where he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, I care about the impact. But I think the difficulty for both him and Nia and Jasmine is that there's a blind spot here around his drinking. So for Danny, it's like when he says to her, that's not in my character, right? It's almost like even though I don't think he's intentionally doing it, I think because he wants to minimize whatever his relationship to alcohol is, there's an inadvertent way that he's minimizing what he did, because the fact is, obviously, this lives in him to some degree. Like, this is a part of his character right now. There is a dark passenger that comes out that's doing things that, not everyone's going to do when they're drunk. And so I just want to say up top, I mean, I'm saying a lot of things, but headline up top of like, I kind of have real compassion for Jasmine of being in this situation where something happened that upset me with someone who I deeply trusted. There's a way in which he's taking responsibility for it, but there's also a way in which he's kind of minimizing it. And I'm kind of left with all of these feelings. And, it's hard because then there is this veil of silence around Danny's drinking, both from Danny and to a certain extent Nia. And it's like, I can't. And so I had to imagine this was part of why she was getting so triggered at that getaway. And there was something in her that wanted to call something out, because it's almost getting in the way of him taking full responsibility for the impact of what he did on her. And even as I'm saying this, if I trust this information, it really feels like this really had an impact on her. And so I just want to start there. And like I said, just kind of create space for Jasmine to have a right to her feelings about this and to have a right to that experience. And I know I said a lot, so I'll stop there.
Well, I have no problem with Jasmine in this whole scenario and in most scenarios, because I feel like she is very accountable for when she does maybe misstep. And I feel like she also deals with some nonsense and actually calls it out quite quickly, but then gets called out for calling it out. And I actually think she handles things really well, much, much better than I would, actually. So it's funny that you're talking about his relationship to alcohol. I really definitely agree with you on the dark side, Danny, that they're all talking about, or the dark passenger. More so than I do. I actually think the alcohol is just like a malaise. Like I don't think of this person. Like, first off, alcoholism is more self-diagnosed, truly, and you can see patterns. There's lots of different types of drinkers. In his case, I don't see it's like, if we say the drinking is the problem, I think we'd actually be missing a lot here. I think if we take the drinking out of it, it's more about what I think everyone's asking of both him and Nia is, how do you really feel? Who are you really? And why is there two sides to you that seem to come out in very aggressive ways to then be like, oh, that was just a misstep and that's not who we really are? It's just a little confusing, right? And I actually love him and Nia, and I genuinely feel their love for each other. And I think they have a genuine connection, and I think they are both really, really good people. But this goes back to what we're always talking about, which is if you haven't integrated your, the dark and the light, then it's going to come out sideways. And I think he uses alcohol when he's tired and frustrated and overworked and overdad. And it's almost like he talks a lot about being really tired as a father. He talks about that a lot. He talks about like wanting to live in the suburbs a lot. Like, this is somebody who is asking for a nap and space, and this person needs the pressure off of them, and they're about to have another baby. He has asked for what he needs on several occasions, and it kind of conflicts with what Nia needs. And she's so good at communicating, and she's so good at having her needs met, to be honest with you, that it sort of feels like, I think he has a lot of anger about what he's not getting in his life. And I think he has a lot of anger about, when men say happy wife, happy life, those types of guys are like smiling all the time or in golfing or whatever, and they're happy wife life. They have or they'll be like, I just listen, I just let her go, and I just let her. It's this weird passive aggression that sort of is like what you would call, like these are like little microaggressions, and it's weird that it would come out with Jasmine. It's almost like sometimes men think of lesbian women as like their homie, where they like, as if it's a gay man where they could just like shoot the shit with and it won't affect them. And that's what Jasmine's talking about. Like, I'm a real person. So like, you treating me this way, there's a double standard. If you'd have done that, if you knew I had a man as a boyfriend, you wouldn't have done that. And I do think that that's such a good conversation that I'm glad is out there in the world, because I feel like lesbian women are so like, what's the word? They're just sort of, people don't take them seriously. Like it's like sexual for them, for a lot of men, and they're stigmatized. That's the word. And so I think it's a really deep for her and really important for her. And her girlfriend felt the same way. Like their reaction was genuine. Like what happened in that bar was not okay. Now, I just want to say really quickly though, Janet conflates everything into her own personal opinion and then puts herself as like judge and jury in this situation in a way that is so inauthentic and it's so unnecessary. And honestly, when Jasmine said she had Karen energy, I was like, yes, don't take that back. Like, please do not take that back. That's exactly what it is. There's nothing wrong with her saying that. Like, why can't Jasmine say you have Karen energy? Like, that's the real thing. And that's a truth. And I wish most white women would acknowledge that they have those moments. And it's not something to just be like, I can't believe you called me that. It's like, oh, let me take a look at that. Might be more interesting. But I liked what you said about it being nuanced and seeing inside all the sides of everything. Because I actually thought his apology. Okay, here's what I want to say, and then I'll leave it to you. I do think he was sorry. And I do think that what he and Nia are up against is they're being villainized now by Janet. Janet shouldn't be involved in this at all. And so, but the situation between him and Jasmine is very real. And even Jason, is that Nia, or Janet's husband? Is that his name? Yeah, that's very real. I feel the authenticity there. Janet is just like chaos agent, judge and jury, thinks she, is always out to tell people how to be. So that's sort of my take on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're so on the same page with Danny because I did kind of intuitively just drop into him towards, just alcohol and sort of what might be going on there. And it was interesting. I'm just going to do it right now too. Yeah, I mean, it's literally what you said. It's just the voice. I'm so tired of holding this all together. Like, it's just, it's like as Danny, if I trust this initial hit, it's just this feeling like life kind of feels like one of those big lumbering ships where there's like hole after hole and I have to keep plugging each hole. And it feels kind of just beyond my control. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. And yet I have to hold it all together. And it's so interesting that you mentioned like happy wife, happy life, because I do feel something specifically here around like, in a way, I'm doing this for the woman. And I want to be clear. I agree with you. I think he loves Nia very much. So I don't want this to be translated just as like, he's just like a misogynistic asshole. Like, no, like, again, we're all more complex than that. I think there's a part of Danny that's very caring and genuinely loving. And yeah, I just feel something here about having to be the good boy who holds everything together for the woman. I'd be so curious about like his personal history and just, I don't know, like, did he grow up? Like, because it almost feels like they've got a lot of kids, but then it almost feels like, I don't know, I guess this is like this energetic sense of like lots of siblings. I don't know where he was in like the age order, but it's this feeling of like, I've got to be the dutiful little soldier who like holds it all together for mom or helps mom out or helps the woman out. And now he's sort of living that with Nia, which is also interesting because Nia, it's weird. Like Nia's so solid and emotionally intelligent, right? But then there's also a way in which, as we know, she comes from like the really sort of like difficult background. She's strong, but there's also a way she presents as, I don't know if delicate's the right word, but I could see how he might feel that in relationship with Nia too, of like, I've got to be the strong, solid one who's sort of holding this all together for everyone. And it's almost getting like too big, like the ship's about to topple over. And yeah, so when I come back to the bottle, it's just like, Jesus fucking Christ. Like, I need me time. Like, I need time to like decompress. Like, I'm tired of holding this all together. Like, this is my fucking reward. And to your point, whatever sort of rage might be there, because you're right. It is interesting that he kind of keeps saying, I want a quieter life. Hey, I don't know that we can handle another kid. And it seems like from what we see, Nia's the one who's kind of like, I want to live in the city. I want more kids. Like, it's almost like she's the one who's maybe a little bit more oriented toward the big, bustling, chaotic life in a way. And so he's sort of like along for the ride, trying to like hold this all together. But there might be some rage and resentment there if he's really kind of not honoring his true needs. And so maybe that's part of like the dark passenger that comes out. But it is this sense like, looking at the bottle, it's just kind of like I said, I'm tired of holding this all together. I want to fucking let loose. I'm tired of being the responsible one. This is time for me. I don't want to be good anymore. And it actually, what I feel is like, I want to be a little bit bad. Like, I want to be fucking bad. I don't want to be the knight in shining armor. I don't want to be the good little boy. I want to fucking be naughty. I want to make some mistakes. You know, I don't know. I kind of feel that in it.
Or like, I want to be the daddy, but in my way. I want to, because his words were, get daddy a drink. It was like, I want to be daddy on my terms.
Yeah. And then it's so interesting, right? Because then what I see sort of playing out in his relationship with Nia, it's like, you know, so then we're at Jax's / Brit's bar in the last episode. And that was so fast because, again, in terms of nuance, it's like, yeah, Janet was poking and, again, kind of weaponizing what was happening. And we you know, I have one kind of final note about Janet before we conclude. But, you know, the truth is Danny was getting belligerent, and you could see, obviously, Nia was triggered by it. And again, it just sort of feels like, it reminds me a little bit of kind of like how Lindsay had gotten sober in the relationship with Carl and things were really smooth, but then she started drinking again. And it kind of felt like there was almost this like part of the tension was the part of Carl that wanted to say, you've got something going on with alcohol, but he feels like he's not allowed to say it. You know what I mean? And it feels like Nia kind of this is what I was speaking. We mentioned this briefly in the last episode we had together. Like, I feel like Nia kind of wants to say, Danny, there's something going on here. And I want to be clear. I'm not.
I think she has.
Well, regardless, I mean, the way that it's playing out on camera is definitely she doesn't want to make a scene because she doesn't want to call attention to it. But like, even the conversation, like I was speaking in this last episode, like that conversation where she was like, I forget what she said. She said something like, you know, yeah, okay, maybe you had one too many
Danny, no.
drinks and then you fell asleep. And he's like, I didn't have one too many drinks. And she was like, Danny, you had one too many drinks. Like moments like that, I'm kind of like, I feel like this could be a possible glimpse even into their private life where Danny, they're talking about this, but it feels to me like my hunch is like Nia is scared or has not yet had the space to be like, look, Danny. And again, we're not saying he's an alcoholic, but to say there's something going on here. You don't want to fully look at it, and yet it needs to be fully looked at. It just feels like there's a tension there, and there's a silence that's not being punctured.
I agree. And I think that she actually has more control and runs the ship more than he does in that relationship. Personally, that's just the way I see it, and not in a bad way. I do think she has a strong moral compass where she's like, no, and I think her like fairness meter is pretty damn good. Like, she's like, we can't say that because that's a double standard. Like, she's like, you can't say, but she mothers him a little bit. Like, there is a definite, like, where she's like, nope, we don't do this. Yes, we do that. Danny, you're going home, you know, and all of these things. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm saying that's a dynamic, right? When somebody's like more of the mother figure, that's a dynamic. So yeah, he wants to be the daddy and smack somebody on the ass when he's like being bad. So I think that relationship of good and bad, I don't think he's an alcoholic. I think there's a difference between like being an alcoholic and then like using alcohol because you're not being like, you have no conception of what's really going on with you.
Well, and that's why I say look at his relationship with drinking. You know, it's like, yeah, we're not saying he's an alcoholic, but there's something to look at there. You know, it's like,
yes.
But it's interesting because I am so intrigued by Nia's relationship to power because she's so interesting because, like, again, she is strong and emotionally intelligent and she has boundaries and she speaks up for herself. And, you know, but then I was sort of dropping in towards Danny when he drinks. And again, you know, this is all based on limited info, but if I trust it, I did feel some fear. Like, I felt fear of Danny's dark passenger. And for Nia, it kind of brought in, as Jamie just started getting curious about her relationship to like out of control men. You know, and, you know, I mean, again, she talked about being homeless with her mother. I don't remember what she said about her father, but it was almost this feeling of Nia. And again, this is, you know, here we are talking about relationship and who we draw in and how they challenge us, right? I just started getting this curiosity for Nia around whether there's kind of a fear or a belief image around like, something around Danny on the one hand being so nice and sensitive and safe in a way, but then there's this dark passenger and kind of like a question in Nia around like, are men really safe? Something just around, you know, if you like poke the bear the wrong way, it can get dangerous.
Yeah, that could be a big part of this whole dynamic too, and that's why I think that's why she's ended up mothering him.
Because that's the thing. It's like, I agree with like she mothers him, right? So there's like a power in that. But I still am so drawn to the way that she's kind of the one who's like, I don't want to move to the valley. I want more kids. And maybe like sort of disowning her own impact of like, there's a way I just can kind of feel that maybe she's not fully. By the way, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with what she wants. But there's maybe a way that she orients towards it where it's like, well, this is just what I want, Danny. Like, as opposed to, like, I just wonder if there's a deeper power in her that has a deeper impact that she disowns. And her strength and her power kind of gets rerouted into the more kind of pageant woman, the kind of quietly strong nurturer who mothers Danny when underneath and kind of controls him because there's fear about his dark passenger, when maybe there's something sort of deeper, like there's something in her that she disowns. Like, you know, like this sort of chaos. It's like, you know what? I fucking want to live in this city. I want a bunch of kids and I want this strongly. And I don't want to even look at the impact this has on you, Danny. And that there might be something she disowns there in terms of her power and her impact that he's picking, that then triggers his stuff. So it's almost like a snake that's eating its own tail, where he then feels like he has to step into the facade of the dad who's picking up the slack of all this chaos, which fuels his rage, which then fuels Nia's fear and her need to take care of him in a controlling way.
Oh, I love it. I love all of that. And you know that they did move to Santa Clarita.
I just suddenly get the sense she's scared of the inner witch in her, like that she's got this kind of chaos in her. Ooh, it excites me when I say it. It's like, ooh, it feels alive. But I know I interrupted you. Were you going to say something else?
No, I just said that they did end up moving to Santa Clarita, and it's not, she's laughing about it, but it's not her preference.
Oh, they moved to, okay.
Well, they moved to Santa Clarita, so that's what he wanted, and then she got another baby. So I feel like they do navigate and sort of one of their strengths, even though I agree with everything you just said, by the way, and it was really, really cool how you laid that out. I do think that they know how to negotiate. And maybe if they were to negotiate, maybe they're negotiating on the outward as like lifestyle, where we live, the physical, but I wonder if the deeper context underneath that is that they're negotiating power within them that's being sort of stunted. That's interesting.
Yeah, but no, I'm like you. I mean, I like them. I think that they mean really well. And,
yeah,
you know, I feel for Danny in the sense that, I mean, again, I really want to respect what Jasmine went through and like give her that space to have that impact. What he did was not okay. This is what I'm saying. It's like he needs to take responsibility for that. And there's something about saying, well, that's not in my character. That to me as Jamie kind of minimizes it. But I do want to say what I feel for him is the part of Danny that is ashamed of that kind of whatever that sort of darker edge is in him, because it actually would be so, like, if he could integrate that, it's sexy, like it's attractive, like he'd be like, because that's the thing, even last year I was always looking at Danny sideways being like, I don't fully believe like your nice guy act. And when I realized again, it's like, no, I think like he is a loving guy, but what happens is when you lead with that as a way to mask a deeper darkness that you're pushing underground, then your niceness feels inauthentic. And I do think there's an integrated version of Danny where he can lead with his heart and he can also be this kind of edgier, I mean, I don't even know what it looks like, but you know, whatever that would look like, he can be an edgier, sexual, hot guy. You know what I mean? Like, and same thing with Nia. Like, that's what I'm saying. It's like she can have maybe this sort of like wild feminine chaos and deeper, darker power. You know, again, they're kind of mirroring each other, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and then I guess I'll just say as a concluding note, Janet, when I just drop into her, it's almost this feeling of like when I see Danny and his drinking and then kind of how Nia's organizing around that, it's just kind of this feeling of like, oh, I spotted a weakness, I can poke it. And it's kind of a feeling of like, I'm going to poke you before you can poke me. It feels like a big game to her. Like that she's one of those people who's like looking out for other people's vulnerabilities before you can get my vulnerability. So I'm going to poke you before you can poke me. And it feels kind of protective. It feels like in her mind, this is all a game. And it's sort of like, that's how I hear. I got to get you before you can get me. So I'm going to poke.
Yeah. She also brings up a lot of sexual jokes and like, it's so bizarre. I'm like, who is this person? Like, who is Janet? You know?
Well, it's interesting is because I agree with you. It's like she is a big question mark. Maybe she deserves her own kind of like deeper exploration.
Yeah.
But no, she's a bit of an enigma. Like, because the way that she looks and presents versus what she does and then how she does it, it's like, yeah, there are very interesting questions here about what are her motives and what drives her, you know?
She likes Dave and Buster's. So to bring to your point of games, it's like she likes a controlled environment of games and winning and tokens and coins and little, you know what I mean? Like a very sort of like almost like she lives in a virtual world.
Yeah, but it is. It's, you know, that's why in a way I understand people getting so inflamed against her and kind of just wanting to 100% have like Danny and Nia's quote unquote side, because it's like what she's doing. There's something that's so infuriating about it. It's like she's seeing someone's vulnerability and she's weaponizing it. And it's not a pleasant situation. So I understand people wanting to just completely, you know, kind of whitewash that side of things in an effort to call out what Janet's doing. But I think that's why I wanted to talk about this, just to say, look, because the problem is if you whitewash what Danny's doing, then you whitewash Jasmine's issues too. It just doesn't feel right to me.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. And that's why when she was called had the Karen energy, the thing that I see as Karen energy in some of her behavior is she'll be like, I was in the pantry and my ex-boyfriend, where it's like you're personalizing it and making everything about you, but then attacking others. And we still don't even know who you are. That to me is that Karen energy of just fear and like pointing fingers with no inner insight and making claims and making everything about you and what happened to you and where your fears are at, but then like inciting chaos into the whole and then claiming like you're the dictator of what's right and wrong. That to me is kind of Karen energy in her.
Okay, well, maybe we'll revisit her on a deeper level once this season's over.
Ugh.
Well, we don't have to. All right, Molly. Well, thank you for once again coming with me on an impromptu ride.
No, that was wonderful, though. Thank you.
I always feel so grateful for your insights and everything you bring forward. Tell people where they can find you.
Same. You can find me I'm a musician and I'm in a band, Lyra and the Light. And I'm also releasing a bunch of music right now. You can find me at mollydurandmusic.com. or on Apple Music or wherever you listen to music, Molly Durand, and on Instagram at Molly Durand.
All right, great. And as always, I'm Jamie. And you can follow me on Instagram at Jamie Stein, JAMIESTEIN, where I have exclusive content. And if you are interested in exploring what it means to work with me, you can send me an email through my website, or you can fill out an application for the intensives I do with people. I'll put a link in the show notes. Thanks for coming along on the ride, and there will be more to come soon, and I will see you all on the flip side. Bye.